Have you ever wondered what the pay is like on Wall Street? I mean, how can you not have? Everyone has. And in fact, I've been saying consistently that money has to be your primary motivator in wanting to work in Wall Street. So how much money are we talking about? Let's cover that in today's episode. Hi, my name is Shalabh Garg. Welcome to Finance Dad. I'm a 25-year veteran of Wall Street. I've had jobs at banks, a hedge fund. I run my own hedge fund currently. And in today's episode, I'll cover money. Let's go. So let's start with structure of pay on Wall Street. The biggest difference in structure of pay on Wall Street versus every other industry is the proportion that you get paid in bonuses. What do I mean by that? In most industries, you have a base pay, which is salary. You get paid that, and a tiny bonus, if any, at the end of the year. Most of your compensation comes to you in the form of that base salary. That is not the case on Wall Street. As you become more and more senior, on Wall Street, 85% of your total compensation of the year can come in the form of a year-end bonus. Now that bonus may itself have several components, how much of it will be cash, how much of it will be, deferred stock and so on and so forth. But of the $100 of compensation, as much as 80 cents of it can come to you in the form of a year-end bonus, which you don't have visibility on until the end of the year. So think about it. You've worked from January to December on a 15% of what your total compensation will end up being, and you don't really know how much bonus to expect at the end of the year. That can lead to a lot of anxiety, that can lead to, how do you plan your life around it, and things of that nature. Why do banks and private equity and hedge funds have it that way? Because they don't produce anything. What does a bank produce? It's not like it gets raw material and produces tires out of it. Their biggest cost is personnel and technology. Technology they cannot control, so they have to spend the money to stay state of the art with respect to offering technology to consumers, to institutional clients, so on and so forth. Personnel cost, though, is something they can control. So by keeping compensation variable until the end of the year, they can define and decide by the end of December what the year was like for them and reduce that bonus pool if the year was unexpectedly poor, especially because of something that happened unexpectedly in September or in August or in November. Like 9/11 in 2001 is a great example, a terrorist attack that destroyed compensation for many of the banks towards the end of the year, and they reduced compensation accordingly. And because a lot of that compensation was going to be paid in the form of variable bonuses, they just reduced the variable bonuses and reduced their costs. After the financial crisis in 2008, the government mandated many of these banks to increase the proportion of base salary in the proportion of total compensation for employees. Their thinking was that having such a big portion of compensation in the form of a year-end bonus makes them look more and more like a casino, as opposed to a loan-giving, client-covering franchises that they are. Think about it. If you know that 80-85% of your compensation is bonuses, you will, even sitting at a bank, swing for the fences, try to make as much revenue and deals and money as you can, because you know that the banks will compensate you accordingly at the end of the year in the form of a year-end bonus. You may ask me, was that a good thing that the government tried to do that? I don't have a good answer for that. The government had a good intent. They wanted to make sure that these banks are focused on customers and not just on their own bottom line. What I do know is by the end of the 2025 or 2024, things have pretty much reverted back to pre-financial crisis. As an example, in 2024, the Goldman Sachs CEO got paid $31 million of total compensation, of which $2 million was his base salary and $29 million was his incentive pay paid at the end of the year. So for the most part, things have reverted back. And from your perspective, what is the point of thinking about what is right in terms of corporate structure and things of that nature? I would take the structure of the industry as a given and try to pursue your best interest with respect to that industry and see what the best you can do for yourself. Because at a young age or even a slightly more advanced stage, sitting there and worrying about right and wrong and structure of industry and what is fair and unfair, let the government, let the other people decide that. And I would focus on what the best, if there is a gold rush, your time is better spent trying to create shovels that people are going to use towards that gold rush, as opposed to sit in a corner and grovel about how this gold rush makes no sense. Okay, so now we have decided that there is a gold rush on Wall Street. Okay, not really. It's been around for a long time. I won't call it a new gold rush. Yet, I have laid out a very lucrative industry in front of you. So let's get right into the numbers. What are the exact numbers at various levels of Wall Street that you can expect to get paid, starting with college graduates? Now, this college graduates is a simple bachelor's degree out of a college in America, and you start your job fresh. You can expect to get paid about $125,000. $100,000 of that will be your base pay. $25,000 will be a mix of a sign-on bonus and a year-end bonus that they will offer you. If you have a master's degree or an MBA, or even a PhD, you would start at a higher salary, even though your job day one will not be that different from a college graduate. But in recognition of your work experience and age and maturity, you will start off at something like $175,000, of which 125 will be base pay, and the rest of it will be a mix of sign-on bonus and a year-end bonus. So between college and business school graduates, you're looking at about $125,000 to $175,000 range as a starting out salary year one at one of these banks. As you grow more senior within a couple of years, as you grow one level up, that number will grow to as much as $300,000. As that number grows to $300,000, your base salary will rise to $150,000, and your bonus will rise to as high as $150,000. So 50% base, 50% bonus. Within 10 years, you can expect this number to become seven figures, $1 million. You can expect to make $1 million in Wall Street in 7 to 10 years of working on Wall Street. When you do reach that 1 million, and not everybody will, but the ones who survive, keep their head down and work hard, will reach as high as $1 million. Your base salary will still be between $250,000 to $300,000 on that $1 million compensation, and 700 of it will come in the form of year-end base pay. So now you're looking at 70%, 70 to 75% of your total compensation coming to you as bonus at the end of the year. The highest level of compensation is enjoyed by the category of managing directors. That is the highest level on Wall Street. Most banks have that title. It takes between 10 to 15 years to reach that level, and you can expect to get paid as much as $2 to $3 million in compensation, with your base salary still only $300,000 to $350,000, or maybe $400,000 at the most, depending on the bank, and the rest of it coming to you in the form of year-end bonuses. So that is the total gamut of compensation that you're looking for to enjoy within 10 years. So you're talking about early to mid-30s, depending on whether you started off out of college or you started out as a business school or a PhD candidate. You're talking about early to mid-30s to be making seven figures on Wall Street. One thing you may be wondering about is, how will my compensation differ from someone who's sitting right next to me, doing the exact same job, just a different background or something like that, but functionally, level is the same, job is the same. Could be associate, could be analyst, could be vice president, or anything else. Like everything in life, some of it is a popularity contest, right? There is no denying it, because ultimately these major banks were around 100 years ago, they were around 50 years ago, they will be around 100 years from now. So having a seat at these banks is a lot more valuable than the person you are. They can fire you and hire a whole new person with a background similar to yours, and nothing at all will change at the bank, right? They know that. So as a result, some of it will always be a popularity contest. How much you're liked by your peers, how much are you liked by your senior managers, how much value do you bring, how efficient you are, how detail-oriented you are. All the things that you study and read about in books on how to succeed, they all apply. I don't have a magic answer for you. I do offer a consulting hour. I can help you with it. I have had jobs on Wall Street of all different kinds, so I know it. You're welcome to book that consulting hour. I can go to the detail of how you can do a better job in ascertaining your level of bonus or the highest level of bonus. But there's definitely a gradation. For the same job, there could be a person getting paid a $100,000 bonus, and a whole different person sitting just 2 rows next to you getting paid a $50,000 bonus. It can vary tremendously. And the more senior you get, all the way to managing director, the range can be so dramatic that you can't even imagine. There will be stories that will come out of some managing director getting paid $6 or $7 million, and you're also a managing director realizing I only got paid $2 million. And that can lead to a lot of competitive feelings, a lot of competitive nature, but that's just the nature of the beast, but no different than any other social structure, whether it's a college or a university or a business school or a army or any such thing. There's some people who end up doing better than others, and it's really hard to know what led them to do that much better than the person next to you. So now that I've covered compensation at banks, as we covered in the previous episodes, there's a whole other part of the financial services industry or Wall Street, which is private equity and hedge funds. You may wonder, how does compensation look like at private equity, and how does it progress in private equities firms and hedge fund firms? At some level, it's similar to banks, but the range is a lot wider. What do I mean by that? Private equity and hedge fund firms, more often than not, hire candidates from banks with 2 to 3 years of experience, because they don't want to spend time training a fresh candidate straight out of a college or a business school. Once they do that, they realize that those candidates have reached a certain amount of compensation at these banks, call it 250 or 300,000. So they start out those candidates at a slight premium to that at a hedge fund. They don't have analyst level positions. Most of the positions that start at hedge funds and private equity firms are associate, and the higher associates at something like a $350,000 starting out pay. From there on, it can get variable very quickly because associates can rise through the ranks very quickly. They may not get rise. They may get thrown out because they don't get along with their managers or haven't done as good a job as those firms thought they would. So it's really like the Hunger Games when it comes to private equity and hedge fund firms, because most of those firms have been started by one or two individuals in the last 20 or 25 years. It's not like they've been around for, no private equity firm, maybe with the exception of one, has been around for 100 years. Most of them have been started by two individuals or three individuals in the last 20 or 25 years. So those individuals that started those firms, they are not retiring or are not dead. They're still there and they're not going anywhere. So one thing you should know is you're not going to get promoted again and again to become CEO of that private equity or hedge fund firm. You will get paid very, very well, especially given how your performance is. But as opposed to a bank where over a 20 or 25-year period, you could rise through the ranks and theoretically become CEO, at a private equity or a hedge fund firm, that path does not exist. The path that does exist is for you to become more and more senior within those firms, to own a revenue pool, to take independent risk at a hedge fund, to own deal making at a private equity firm, and then get paid a portion of it, where that compensation can rise much higher than it would at a bank. Against that obviously comes risks, where most people will not rise through the ranks. I would think of these jobs as the NFL. As you know, at the NFL, so many talented kids want to become quarterbacks and join, and many of them succeed, but for each one that succeeds, there's so many others that don't. Well, what happens to them? They become coaches, they become guides, they become trainers. The same thing happens at these hedge funds and private equity firms. Not every player succeeds, and so many of them find jobs within the industry in jobs that don't pay as much but have more stable incomes. Now, I know what all of you are thinking through this entire episode. You are thinking, can I become a billionaire on Wall Street? And let me answer that question simply for you. Working at a bank, you cannot. There are a few exceptions. Maybe there is one CEO or two CEOs that have worked at the same bank for 2+ decades and got a lot of their year-end bonuses in the form of stock in the bank, and the bank stock has risen by 30, 40, 50% over a long period of time, thereby then making them billionaires. But on compensation alone, to become a billionaire at a bank is unlikely. Just because banks are not compensating that high the way they used to prior to the financial crisis. The government regulates them more strictly. The government controls how much leverage they can take. So to expect that working at a bank, now that is not to say that I'm discouraging you for a bank job, because I do believe that adjusted for the amount of risk those jobs offer, if you have the eye for the detail, you can survive 15, 20 years of working there, you will create a really, really nice nest egg and compensation structure for yourself and for your family. The way you can make a billionaire, like everybody in the country has made when they have become a billionaire, is by owning something of your own. That is the only way in our great nation of ours to become a billionaire. You cannot become a billionaire doing a job for someone else in any way or form. Hedge funds and private equity, you can become a billionaire in those positions. Why is it that you can become a billionaire? Because they're managing a lot of assets and they're directly paying you a portion formulaically of how much revenue you create. You will not know of many of those names, but I would encourage you to go on Google and search for hedge fund billionaires. And what you will find, the way they become billionaires is either they own those hedge funds or they own the private equity firms. So in other words, bulk of the total revenue after the compensation for the individual employees has been paid out goes to them, making them a billionaire. But there will also be examples at those hedge funds of employees that have become billionaires by working 10 or 15 or 20 years of consistent performance. The reason simply is because they pay you 15 to 18% of what you make. And if you can't command $100, $150 million of profit that is entirely attributable to you, all of a sudden you'll make $15, $20, $25 million of total compensation every year. And then if you reinvest it back either into the hedge fund or into the stock market or wherever else over a course of 20 years, you can become a billionaire. So short answer to your question, banks no, hedge funds and private equity yes. Risk is commensurately low at a bank, very high at hedge funds and private equity firms. Make your decision wisely. Make sure you are the personality type that commands to being in one part of the industry versus the other. Don't run after them purely out of that billion, because billion may sound like a really nice number. I know billion is the new million in our great country of ours today, but ultimately $1 million is still a lot of money. If you have more questions about what is it like to work in a bank versus private equity and hedge fund, I would ask you to go back to my first episode. I covered that in a little more detail in terms of the differences between the two. Whenever I describe private equity and hedge funds, I know it always comes across as the Hunger Games. The reason it comes across that way, because it really is. I'm not exaggerating. So that brings us to the end of our episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I offer a consulting hour to delve into these topics in any more detail, or as much detail as any of you may want. Use the description box below to reach me. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me grow, and see you next time.